Tekla structures for transmission towers. First, let's take a look at a project already detailed within Tekla. Here's a complete tower, as you can see, complete with all its members, bolts, plates. If you take a look at this angle, for example, we can change that to a different size. You see that reflect itself on screen. Bolts themselves, change the diameter of the bolts, something smaller, larger, perhaps even change the settings or number. Take a look at some of the drawings created. There's an example fabrication drawing, complete with those dimensions, everything needed to totally fabricate that piece. Of course, within the drawing themselves, everything else is an object, so labels, dimensions can all be easily moved like any CAD drawing. Details of one of the plates, and of course one of the larger engineering GA drawings. They can see sections through, elevations, blow-up details, three-dimensional views, all automatically created. Workshop drawings of plates, and of course material lists. Anything wanted for fabrication can be created directly from the Tekla structures model. For example, we have a Excel spreadsheet material list. And of course we can have barcode lists. Any kind of material list required can be created directly from the Tekla model. Okay, so let's create a new tower structure in Tekla. So first of all then we're going to say let's create a new structure. I'm going to save changes to that model. I'm going to create a new model. We'll call this one Tower-200. We're using a model template. The model template contains all the settings already there for transmission towers, such as your connections and your components for creating the tower bases. So we'll say OK to that. And there we have our new model. As you can see, it comes with some default grid lines. First thing I'm going to do is set that to be a typical kind of tower base. So click on these grid lines here. We can either type in manually the spacings in the X direction, the Y direction. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let's load in tower grid. And you can see here these settings are already into the system. So we've got a 10 meter by 10 meter grid with the different spacings in the elevations. You can then say modify that, yes. And that then is my typical layout. I'm just going to quickly fit that, so that now gives me the area to work around the whole structure. Okay, the next thing we do is cut slices through the building. So if we click on these particular grid lines here, we'll say okay, let me create views along the grid lines and create them. What this has done is created me sections through the actual tower at different elevations and different levels. So if I say okay, let's have a look on grid line A. You can see that's an elevation looking directly on grid line A. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do then is put in some simple concrete bases and piles for this tower. So we click on the actual concrete pads. We've got one set up here which is the sort of tower base. If we load that in, you can see it's simple 1500 by 1500. We can say okay, let's put that pad in that position, that position, that position, and that position. and then we'll put the pile caps. So we click on here, click on this and say pile cap. Again, this is 500 by 500 and it's going from minus 500 elevation, which is beneath there, to minus 5 meters. So again, if we quite simply then click on these points, we can draw in those simple concrete bases. The next thing we're going to do to that is we're going to add some rebar, some reinforcing. So first thing we'll do to help me do this is we'll change the transparency level of the system. So I'm going to set this down to what we call Control 5 Shift 5, which is a sort of transparency option. If we click on the pieces, you can see each piece then, as we window certain areas, as solid. So first thing we'll do then is we'll put some reinforcement in the top of the pad footings. So we'll say pad footing, we'll click on this piece here, and if we just make that into another transparency level, you can see the reinforcement has been added. Again, we'll click on that one there like so, click on that one there like so, click on that one, so we put the reinforcements in there. If I take a look in the reinforcements themselves, what I'll do now is I'll say okay, let's put in there reinforcement for the pile cap. So if we click on this piece here, you can see we put reinforcement in for the start and finish of the piles, like so. And then we can put in rectangular reinforcement as well if we wish. So again, if we just run around these, put in that reinforcement, change that transparency level back to solid, redraw the window, that's the bases with all the reinforcements within them. Continue. What we'll do now is we'll introduce into there the sort of tower leg elements. Now we can draw these manually by drawing parts from point to point, or we do have components which actually help us to build this very quickly. What I'll do first of all is introduce some manual input members. So I click on this particular one here. If I click on this command here, which is the insert beam, you can see there we're going to put a piece in which is called angle. It's the profile is 100 by 100 by 8, the material. So if I say okay, we want to draw that piece from, let's say, the nearest point of here to the nearest point of this point here, and if we zoom in, you can see we've got the angle like so. Again, we can click on that, we can make any number of changes. So if we click on this one here, we can rotate it, we can change where it's positioning itself, center, top leg, bottom leg, left, right. So we'll just set that center. So very easy to put these pieces in here. Again, if we click on the piece, you can see the length of it, so it's self-checking. Let's delete that one. Now let's use a component to actually introduce the bottom base legs. So within Tekla we've got a large library of components specialised for transmission towers. One of these is to actually create a whole tower base. I'm not going to use that one. I'm actually going to create the actual legs and diagonals separately. So what I'll do first of all is say okay, let's create these tower main members. I've got one set up here which is the typical base of the building. If I just load that in, and I've got this one set, if we take a look, to be a 10 metre by 10 metre base with 3 metres at the very upper level. And you can see there we've got one at 6 metres 500, then another spacing at, well, 5 metres 900. I'm going to be using 200 by 200 by 16, 150 by 10, 100 by 100 by 8 angles. So apply OK, and what we'll do is we'll click on the point. That then will insert the first base elements into the model, like so. It remains a component. That means I can click on this, and of course if I'm not happy with the spacing, let's say that needs to be 1 metre at the top, we can quite simply click on these elements, modify it, it will change the whole tower. However, I'm happy with that as it stands, so we'll just undo that. We'll click on here, we'll then add the next point, typical tower 2, which is going to be from 3 metres to 3 metres. So I just click on that one, that's the next point, and then the final apex of the tower, which is tower 3, we can load that in, apply OK, and we can of course click on that point there, which puts in the very top of the tower. So that is my initial building blocks of the tower. At this stage I can create some now GA drawings, show me the sections and elevations of the building. even though that's not complete, the GA drawings will always, or the engineering drawings will always keep themselves updated from the model.